Drama for one Dallas team, pretty good. The other drama for the other Dallas team, maybe not so much. Cowboys announced yesterday that they are planning to have George Pickens play under the franchise tag for this upcoming season and won't negotiate a long-term contract. Pickens hasn't yet signed the one-year deal worth $27.3 million. There would be no financial penalties if he doesn't report the mandatory minicamp in June. Here's what Stephen Jones said yesterday.
Let's start with the fact it's not easy, having two receivers being paid top of the market. I mean, that's obviously a stretch, especially when you have other great players on your team, a quarterback that's been here being the highest paid player in this league for many years now. That's part of it. The other thing is the newness of George being here. And I think George has just done an amazing job. I mean, he's exceeded all expectations. I think anybody, or we wouldn't have gotten him for a third-round pick. So that's a plus. And, a lot of these things, they make their way toward a long-term deal.
There are a lot of layers to that soundbite from Stephen Jones. Dana, let's start with you from what we're going to pick from this. By the way, nice outfit change back to the sweater. Are the Cowboys and George Pickens headed for a divorce?
No doubt. And Stephen Jones' one comment is everything. He literally just said, well, let's start with the fact that it's hard to pay two receivers top of the market. In 2027, CeeDee Lamb is scheduled to make $46.2 million. They're not paying both CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens top of the market. Stephen Jones just said it. And so right now, my thought going into tonight with the draft is if Jordan Tyson, the receiver out of Arizona State, or Carnell Tate, the receiver out of Ohio State, fall to number 12, even though the Cowboys need defensive players, they're going to take one of those receivers, and then the shopping for George Pickens starts. He was traded for a third pick. If the Cowboys get a second-round pick for George Pickens coming off of last season, they should, and they draft a receiver tonight, that's a good job by their front office. The Raiders, the Chiefs, the Ravens, the New England Patriots, if they take a receiver at 12, they all should be on the phone with the Cowboys seeing if you can trade. Obviously, got to sign the tag, all that happens. But I don't see how both CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens are Cowboys in the future.
Michael, this seems a little bit different from last year with Micah Parsons and then the previous year with Dak. What do you make of it? And CeeDee Lamb, what do you make of this situation?
This is one thing I don't understand. If you're going to essentially announce a divorce, why are you signing into the franchise tag? For what? For the one season, but the point is first of all, this is going to go south. Yeah. With Pickens, as with most receivers in the league, this is going to go south fairly soon. It's going to be week after week. I'm going to check in on you guys every morning talking about Jerry's comments, talking about Pickens' comments, talking about who's on what podcast. Yep. This is going to be messy. So again, why announce this? Why get to the point, to Daniel's point? Yeah. Stephen Jones is going to sit there and make this plain? Okay, fine. But you just franchise tagged him. Mm-hmm. But by the way,
this story will continue. It'll just be in the A block, not in the B block later on.
The draft is over.
Exactly.
Well, watch if the Cowboys take a receiver tonight.
And then suddenly it's in the A block tomorrow. Yeah. Right now, what do you think of this situation here with both sides?
It's expected.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're George Pickens and his agent, you should have known this was going to happen, right? You got a chance to go there and play really well, and the Cowboys franchise tag people, and they make you play on it. I mean, that's what they do every single year. So you should have known that as Georgia. You should have known as the Cowboys, as they do, you can't pay two receivers $100 million plus in guaranteed money. And George is not going to play on the tag. He will not be a Cowboy, whatever shakes down. I think even if they don't draft one high, he's going to get dealt at some point this offseason. We've seen him be disgruntled at times, the body language, being outspoken when he's not happy. You think that's going to work here in Dallas? He's going to be unhappy. It can't work. This marriage is done.
Keep in mind, they pick at 12 and 20.
I do know that.
Let's get that context here for tonight as we have this scenario play out.
Yeah, they need defense. And I think where their focus is at 12 is defense. And I think they have a list of players that if they fell to them or if they could make a small trade up to get one of them, that they would do it. However, they also do like Jordan Tyson. And if they were to take him at 12 because their defensive options were all exhausted, that does prompt a conversation about what do you do with Pickens. I think the Cowboys are very confident in their position that the right thing to do with George Pickens is the franchise tag this year. Great year. Let's see it again. Jordan's just mentioning, there's other stuff that comes with George Pickens. We heard a lot of things about him in Pittsburgh, about, inconsistency of focus, this kind of thing. You talk about body language. I mean, there's a reason Dallas was able to get him, to Stephen Jones's point, for a third-round pick. So I think they are saying, George, do it again, and then we'll see. Because CeeDee Lamb in 2027 is scheduled to make a $28 million salary. Dan mentions the $46 million cap hit. They can reduce that if they need to. But hypothetically, if George Pickens plays this year and has a monster year and CeeDee Lamb has injuries, you can start to think about, do you want to pivot that way? So I think the Cowboys see this as the best way to set themselves up with the most possible options going forward.
Dana, what would be the Cowboys' dream scenario here tonight?
The Cowboys' dream scenario would be for Jordan Tyson to fall to 12, them draft Jordan Tyson, and then the Chiefs call and offer the 29th pick for George Pickens. And I don't know how realistic that is because, again, obviously you have to agree to a signing of a franchise tag and working out a contract. But given everything that Stephen Jones said and given where the Chiefs are with their wide receiver group, I don't know how, if you watch Dallas take that wide receiver tonight, again, if you're the Chiefs, if you're the Raiders, if you're New England, if you're the Baltimore Ravens, it's at least not having a conversation of, do we want to call Dallas and see if they're willing to part ways with George Pickens?
I mean, the idea of George Pickens, and no one's questioning his talent, going to the Chiefs.
5, one of their 2 first-rounders. They also got the 10th pick in the Dexter Lawrence trade. New York has plenty of needs after a 4-13 season, and Kimberly Martin is on the scene to talk draft strategy for the G-men.
Hannah, in league circles, the big question on everyone's mind is who will actually be running the Giants draft when they're on the clock? Now, I can tell you from being here the past 2 days that head coach John Harbaugh is a lot more involved in the draft process than most head coaches. And GM Joe Shane told me he likes that. They spent most of Monday in Shane's office going over draft day scenarios and discussing which players their coordinators like the most. I can tell you by Tuesday, around noon, their board was pretty much set. So with 2 picks in the top 10, the message inside this building has been clear. Don't overthink it, just take good football players.
Great insight there, Kimberly. Thank you. Next up, Titans at number 4. Tennessee, as you know, took Cam Ward with the first overall pick last year. Their new head coach, Robert Saleh, is a defensive guy. Once again, he was the 49ers DC last season. The Titans certainly could use a playmaker on that side of the ball. Plenty are available, as both Mel Kiper Jr. and Matt Miller have Notre Dame running back Jeremiah Love instead headed to Nashville, the explosive playmaker we just heard about in their recent mock drafts. But Field Yates and Jordan Reed have them taking an impact defensive player there. So if he's on the board, that's going to be super interesting. So selecting third, the Arizona Cardinals, another team with a new head coach. As you know, former Rams offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur certainly has his work cut out for him. You know, they cut Kyler Murray. Arizona has a ton of needs after a 3-win season. And here's who our draft experts have them taking. 3 out of 4 have the Cardinals taking Arvell Reese, while Jordan Reed has Francis Mauigoa coming out of Miami, going to Arizona to shore up that offensive line for no matter who's throwing the ball. All right, the draft starts at number 2. The Jets can go any number of ways. They need an edge rusher, a secondary receiver, long-term solution at quarterback. Not going to be picked there. Remember, they also have the 16th pick. Sal Paolantonio is covering the Jets with more.
Here's the headline in the New York Post today. Everybody's on edge to see which edge rusher the Jets will take at number 2. Will it be Arvell Reese of Ohio State or David Bailey of Texas Tech? And what the Jets do at number 2 will determine what a lot of other teams will do in picks 3 through 10. At 16, I'm hearing the New York Jets are open for business. They may want to move up and get a wide receiver like Jordan Tyson, or move down if Tyson's going to be later available in the first round. But there is no expectation that the Jets will take a quarterback on day 1. Back to you.
Thanks, Sal Powell. And the number 1 selection in the 2026 NFL Draft. We know the Raiders are going to take quarterback Fernando Mendoza. Hard to argue with that Heisman Trophy, the undefeated season, the national championship. Lindsey Theory has some insight into Vegas's thinking.
Hannah, the Raiders will select Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza with that first overall pick, but what happens after that? The Raiders have 9 more selections. Watch for them early to address defensive tackle as they shift to a 3-4 scheme, and also pick a receiver to help bolster that offense that Mendoza eventually will take over. One more interesting note. I spoke with general manager John Spytek and asked him how many phone calls he's been fielding. Spytek tells me the lines are always open, and then he rattled off all of the names of their outside backers, telling me they live in a world where they're all here right now, but there might come a time when they're not.
Thanks, Lindsay. All right, SportsCenter on the Road is presented by Geico. As we head to Pittsburgh now, we welcome in draft analyst Matt Miller, front office insider Mike Tannenbaum, as we continue to dive into these top 5 picks. All right, Matt, let's start with you. Which team is the biggest wild card going into tomorrow night?
Yeah, it's one of those we just looked at. The Arizona Cardinals are definitely a wild card. No one knows what they're going to do at number 3 overall. Monty Ossenfort, the general manager, has some directions he could go. Arvell Reese, the outside linebacker edge rusher from Ohio State. Or could they surprise us and take Jeremiah Love, the running back from Notre Dame? Love is my number 1 overall player in the draft. Now, do you take a running back in the top 3, knowing that they would immediately become the highest